So here today with Jamil Qureshi. Jamil, how are you?
Hello, Nick. I'm great, thank you. I'm very good. It's a Friday today when we're doing this, so always good on a Friday.
It's a motto of life. So good. So let me ask, kind of, you're a fantastic speaker, and what always amazes me when I hear you speak is the number of subjects kind of you delve into and out of while kind of having your core content. Do you have a specialist areas, not specialist, favorite areas that you enjoy touching on, and have you seen changes over the last few years in terms of what you're being asked to do?
I'm glad you changed it from specialist. I've never been a specialist or expert in anything, but
I took it back very quickly.
a jack of all trades when it comes to psychology. But you know what, I am actually, and I think that it's funny because sometimes people say you're a sports psychologist, or sometimes people say you're a performance coach, and I think I think psychology is psychology. I think if you're a CEO, if you're a sales team, if you're one of the best golfers in the world, we're all the same, aren't we, in regard to our fears, insecurities, ambitions, goals, and all that sort of stuff. So I do just say psychology, and I do. You're right, and I think that's one of the reasons why I talk about anything to do with performance and people. So anything to do with culture, anything to do with engagement, leadership ideas, management principles, driving a culture for performance where people get to do differently by thinking differently. So anything in that space is me. I think a few interesting things which are coming up recently is trust is a big thing. And,
Right.
I want to talk about trust, how to build more authentic relationships, be that in the sales environment or as a leader. So, and I do believe that businesses have been built on silicon, they've been built on real estate, built on capital. I think the next ones will be built on trust. So
Right.
that's why it is a big subject. And I do think that companies and leaders have gone wrong over the last few years when they are focused on what they can have rather than what they can be. More of an essential partner. The way in which you partner with your clients and speakers. And I think that. So I think that trust is a big one. I think that.
Can I ask you about that? Then we'll come over. Can I just quickly? Do you think companies and individuals have fallen into that because of circumstances, or do you think there's been an active, I don't know, maturing of our brains to actually realise what we're actually doing?
Yeah, I think a bit of both. I actually think that I think that COVID was a big one because I think we realised our world was broken. We looked at it in economic models, governance, organisations, all of these things have contributed to us having a very fragile society and economy. So I think that people are trying to build, something different, reimagine, repurpose, reinvent. And so therefore, I think we are more demanding of the organisations that we interact with, and hopefully more demanding, of governments, more demanding of each other. So, I think that, our responsibility, or people are looking for a responsibility to build something which, is more sustainably successful than what we had before. So I think that organisations have been pushed into that position. I think that reputations weren't made. I think they were revealed. And I think that so I think that people want something different, and I think that organisations are realising this, and seeing it as an important part of their strategy.
Interesting, thank you. Sorry, I stopped you halfway through.
No, that's okay. No, we were talking about what I'm seeing at the moment in regard to topics.
Yeah.
And again, I think you'll probably know more about it than me in regard to what you're being asked for. But I think that trust, building relationships, authentic leadership, change and transformation is always a big one, but it seems to be amplified. How do we drive change? How do we make the most of change environments? How do we create balanced performance, healthy working environments in a time of disruption? So I think all of the spaces that you would probably guess at are probably the ones where people are.
But from your perspective, in terms of the questions you get asked and almost your content that you deliver, has that changed and evolved? Have we evolved, or are you still talking to us about the same kind of core beliefs, and it's just ramping up and dependent on the outside environment?
Yeah, I think that, I actually think that, many of the principles and ideas of psychology are the same. If you're driving change or transformation, in an organization, in an individual, in a time of affluence, or a time of more restricted economies, or markets. I think many of the principles are the same. So I guess that the fundamentals, in regard to how to drive performance in a team or an individual, no matter what the environment, are similar. I think the nuances come when you take a brief from a client, and it's almost they start talking about, well, here's our sales team and this is what they're going through, or here's my leadership team, or my all staff conference, we've had a great first quarter, and I think that you almost sort of shape the thinking, ideas and principles around the specifics of what people are trying to achieve in that hour or that day.
And when you walk into that room on the kind of, you've been briefed beforehand, and when you walk into that room or stand on that stage, what are you looking for from an audience, kind of in terms of understanding whether they're seeing this as something they're going to be receptive to, or something it's someone else just standing up delivering us some speech and we're not really going to listen.
It's a really good question, Nick, and it's a long one to answer in the short time we've got. I actually think it's an experience thing. I honestly believe that when you stand on stage and look at an audience, if you've been doing it for a little while, you know exactly how to pitch it, just looking at them. And and I think that I think rapport is key. So not to be a mouthpiece for the company. But, sometimes you do get the CEO or whoever say, we need them to understand this. Can you tell them that? Which is the message that they've been telling them for the last year or last 3 years.
And hasn't cut through at all.
But as an independent, as someone who comes in who talks about high performance, and reference elite sport and elite business, and what I've seen happen for people to drive change or winning attitudes in their business. I tend to talk from a perspective of what I know and what I've experienced. And I think that rapport is key. So as soon as you walk onto a stage, whatever your message is and whatever the content, it just doesn't land, unless people buy into you. And part of that is to construct the experience more so than the content. As you know, I don't never use slides. I use a flip chart. And one of the reasons why I do that is for that exact reason, Nick, is that people can see the presentation evolve in front of them, created in front of them, more so than brought along and plugged into a computer. So work with the audience, and it's dynamic, and you build it in front of them and with them, according to the notes they're taking and where they're nodding their heads. I think you get the level of engagement to get any message across, and any content across in a way which will land the best.
So do you prefer a bigger audience or a smaller audience?
The bigger the better for me. So my audiences, I think, are probably around 250, something like that.
Yeah.
But bigger the better. So yeah. The biggest audience I've ever had was 5,000, and then 3,500. But
how were they?
Yeah, great. I prefer it because you can play to the one person in the audience who's really enjoying it. When you see 15 people, I think in the faces to see whether everyone is, what everyone is thinking and and how they are. And there's 3,500 people. You can see someone who's having a great time. You can always focus your attention on that, because it's like as a speaker, we're all insecure and frail, really, although we appear to be very confident. So you always look for someone who's actually enjoying it to validate you. 2,500 people. I think there was only one person enjoying it anyway. He just happened to be in the eye line. Everyone else hated it.
They were a plant for you. You brought them along. Your friend, sit there, and I'm going to talk at you.
You sit there and nod your head and smile.
Always there, always willing to do it for you, Jamil, although you don't need it. Tell me, as we come back, you're doing more and more international stuff. Just kind of how's that going, and kind of how do you adjust yourself accordingly for international audiences?
Yeah, you know me. I tend to speak quickly. I tend to be quite irreverent. I speak in slang. But you don't necessarily do those things for an international audience. So, for me, speak a bit slower. It's the pronunciation more so than the speed. So not necessarily speaking slower, it really is actually how you pronounce your words. And you just choose some different words to use, rather than the colloquialisms. The one thing that I think really helps me with the amount of international audiences I speak to, the one thing that really helps me, and people say this actually, is the flip chart. And the reason why is that when I draw on a flip chart, I we'll be talking for 5 minutes, and during that 5 minutes, I will draw a triangle, or I'll draw 3 letters in a
Yes.
regular way. And it's almost the notes that I would take if I was in the audience. So what happens is that, if you haven't got English as a first language, and you're getting the explanation, but you're getting a visual as well that sit together. And then when I, walk past people's notebooks or whatever, you'll often see in their notebooks the practical takeaway that I've put on here is what they've put on their
Right.
pad. So while it makes it nice and practical, people got a nice takeaway because there's a short way of explaining what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And if you are struggling a little bit with the comprehension, then you've got the diagram and you've got the explanation.
Yeah, gotcha. Brilliant. Jamil, I won't take up more of your time. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking. Thank you so much indeed.
Thank you so much to you and all your team for all the hard work you do for all our speakers and all the clients. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. You take care.
Cheers, mate.